Welcome to Grab Your Gear. This is Joe, and I hope you're having a great day. Starting your day off post-election, also 9/11, so you want to remember that and honor those who, by no means of their own, were in the middle of a terrorist attack 23 years ago today. But today we're going to talk politics. We're going to talk about the debate, and we have a little mini panel. First time we've ever done that here on Grab Your Gear, but I'm sure it'll be exciting and well worth it. Our guest today, who hasn't been with us before, is Tricia McLaughlin, former senior advisor with Vivek 2024, also a regular commentator for CNN and Fox News, I believe, and a graduate of the University of Maryland, which makes you a turtle. And also joining us, Jack Windsor. Jack, of course, the founder and managing editor of the Ohio Press Network. So Jack and Tricia, thanks for joining us here on Grab Your Gear. Hey, before we get started, I got to give you the audience here, Tricia. This is not a normal podcast for like normal people. This is Grab Your Gear is for people who get up every morning and actually do that. They grab their gear, go to work, be it a backpack, be it a tool, tools. A lot of our people grab tools. They're electricians, plumbers, people like that. And they don't, on their way to work, they probably listen to a playlist more than they do any news. So this is kind of built around trying to give them information that they can tolerate and probably actually affects their lives. The crowd you're not talking to today, Tricia, is the Lululemon Range Rover driving suburban people on their way to tennis. They probably hate this show if they even heard of it. So that's what we're up against. But start with it. I'm going to throw it to both of you, and then we'll go to Tricia first. Just your 90,000 foot observation of what they called a presidential debate last night. Tricia, general thoughts.
Of course, we've been hearing from every conservative or, objective-minded person that it was 3-on-1 last night effectively. That being said, I think Donald Trump did a fine job. I would have rather seen him prosecute her case more, her record more. Why hasn't she done what she says she'll do for the last 4 years? Why did she talk about banning fracking? Why did she vote for the Green New Deal? Not just vote for it, but she was a co-sponsor of it and said she would filibuster on it. What about the Inflation Reduction Act? All of these, important details, I think, were left out of the conversation, but I do think she left a vacuum because Donald Trump will continue to define her for the next 54 days. And she didn't define herself last night. She just really focused and filibustered with attacks on Donald Trump that really have already been litigated already. So I think it might have been a short-term win for her, but not long-term.
Okay, Jack, what do you think?
I really like Tricia's take. It's a lot more positive than mine. End of world texted both of you last night, I believe. And my gut visceral response was, this is a disaster. But let me tell you how I got there. I felt like it was a disaster because of what Tricia just said. It was clearly 3-on-1. And I was disgusted and disturbed by the fact that moderators fact-checked Donald Trump repeatedly. And they missed opportunities to fact-check Kamala Harris. I mean, first of all, are you kidding me? She's talking about Donald Trump picking up the phone and telling lawmakers not to pass a bill that would apparently, in her words, fix the border crisis. Where's the moderator to stand up and go, are you kidding? All you have to do is enforce border law, and this becomes a moot point. And they let her get away with the Charlottesville lie that has been debunked by Snopes. They let her get away with saying that Trump had an abortion ban. They let her get away with lying about crime statistics. And Joe, you and I talked about this previously. The FBI crime statistics do not capture the reality of crime in America because they cut over to a new system in 2021, 2022 in big cities like New York City, LA, and other places around the country didn't report data and information. And as the FBI has gone in and done more digging, for example, there was this idea that hate crime was down when they actually put boots on the ground or picked up the phone and called and made sure that 7,000 precincts were reporting information. They went, oh, wait a minute, it's actually up 12%. So there were opportunities for the moderators to actually moderate the debate, and they absolutely missed. So as someone who's moderated debates before, I was furious, but I also agree with Tricia. Donald Trump does a very good job at using emotional words, but I wish sometimes he would go into the innards. Like, for example, when he talked about Springfield, Ohio, we uncovered information last night that says somebody's lying there because there are police reports that waterfowl were captured. But let's also talk about the stress and strain that those illegals are causing the economy, healthcare workers, the city. Those things, I think, if he really were to sit down and share some of those facts, would bring some more power and girth to the argument that criminals and illegals are bombarding our communities.
Okay, so I kind of agree with everything you said, but I think I was trying to watch it differently, and it felt like a courtroom. It felt like they wanted her to look like a prosecutor, and that Trump was on trial, and the moderators felt like the judges, like they kept correcting the witness type thing. That was my
Yep.
initial thought, and I think they wanted her to look that way. I swear to God, I thought she was going to come out and say, "My name is Kamala Harris, on behalf of the people," like you do in a courtroom. I was waiting on that line. Um, our audience is interested in math versus emotion. I mean, they tend to go to the grocery store and see what things cost. I think gas prices, things like that. That's what we hear. Jack and I have talked about this, Tricia, that our crowd, when you talk to them, are really more interested in grocery prices, gas prices, mortgage, things like that. And when we found they kind of tie crime and immigration together.
Mhm.
And if I take those topics and I watched that debate last night, I feel like maybe somebody told Kamala Harris to say the word tax credit, and then I didn't get a sense that she understood how the economy worked. Is that fair?
I think that's totally fair. I mean, from the outset of the debate, the very first question was on the economy. Are you better off? Are Americans better off than they were 4 years ago? And on the first question and the number one issue to Americans, she completely pivoted, and ABC News let her get away with it. She was just started talking about how she comes from a middle class family. She started going anecdotal, but she never actually said why inflation is double what it was when she came into office and what she's actually going to do about it.
So that is that's where I wonder if people who are going to vote even hear her talk, because they will go to the grocery store and fill their car up today. I'll throw this at you, Jack. And I know you were. I didn't get your text because my phone was charging, and then when I logged on this morning at 4 a.m., you were about to hang yourself. So I decided I'd just wait to see if you showed up today.
Fair.
But don't you think, based on news cycles? Now I'm a reformed former NBC employee, so I mean I know what really weird looks like. The news cycles were short back then, but Jack, do you really believe this news cycle is going to carry this debate very long, or is it going to be something that people were already in the can for? Kamala just said she just nailed it. Now we know she's whoever. I just kind of wonder the reality.
Yeah, so it's really hard for me, right? Because I'm in the weeds on this stuff. And so I'm always thinking about those types of things. And the thing that kept coming to me last night, and I believe this today, is I don't think that we'll see her on a debate stage again. I think that she provided enough fodder for her pals in the press to carry the water for her until November 5th. That concerns me a little bit because they will replay, the emotion, heartstring tugging stuff. But when I really think about it, I've talked to two people this morning that I don't talk to normally, one on the way into the office. And he said, "Well, what'd you think last night?" And I said, "Well, what did you think?" He goes, "Well, it didn't change my mind." And I think that to me is the crux of it. I don't know how many undecideds there were. And there was a poll that came out on Monday, the Siena College New York Times poll. And the number of undecideds there were the super majority of them, I believe, wanted to know more about Kamala Harris's policy positions. They didn't get any of that last night. I got a lot of word salad. Actually, her word salad was not as bad as it usually is. So she was articulate, she was well spoken, but she said a lot of nothing. And so if you went into watching that debate thinking, all right, I'm going to learn more about her economic policy, I mean, all you really got was child tax care credit so you could buy a baby seat and some diapers, and we want to make it easier for you to buy a home. But you didn't learn about how they're going to stop government spending, drive prices down to fill your car, pay your electric bill, send the kid to daycare, and pay for your health insurance. So, I think that the press is going to carry the water for her on this. The news cycle is fickle, though. I mean, we've got a road and ramp, or excuse me, runway ahead of us. where anything could happen. And I mean that, anything. When we go back to July, that was like a decade, right? We had someone that was shot, someone dropped out of the race, someone entered the race. Who knows what the hell's going to happen in the next 50 plus days? But I think that she's going to get every aid from the press that she needs. And that's the part that really frustrates me. The PolitiFacts of the world, by the way, funded by the Poynter Institute, go to their X account and look at how they are doing one thing and one thing only. They're trying to discredit everything Donald Trump says, and they're trying to promote everything Kamala Harris says. And so these are the types of things that give me nightmares and heartburn.
So, Tricia, you're a communications expert. I want to ask you two questions. One, what would you say to the moderator? Let's say Vivek was on that stage and you just replaced, and that happened to him, and you were with this campaign, and you watched the way that was handled. What would you say to ABC News? And then what would be your thought on how people in Michigan and Pennsylvania watched that event?
I mean, that is the crux of the problem, is that when you go into the lion's den, then you play by the lion's rules. And there's nothing really to say. Can they punish ABC by not giving them another interview with Donald Trump? Sure. But I think the American people are smart. And they understand that the media is a corrupt institution. It really is the propaganda arm of the Democrat Party. I was on a call with a couple of friends late last night and then this morning. Most of my friends, lean left, especially women, in their late 20s, early 30s, tend to do so. Even them said, wow, I cannot believe how unbalanced that was. I think that undermines not only ABC's credibility, of course, but Kamala Harris's credibility and makes her look like a weak candidate that she couldn't fight on her own. I think that them really putting their hand on the scale is actually going to backfire. If I'm in Michigan or I'm in Pennsylvania, though, I'm asking, why am we still relitigating January 6th when we should be talking about why inflation is double it was, why I can't pay my grocery bill, why I have to get a second job? Who's actually going to solve this issue? Who's going to solve the immigration issue? I think we got one question on the economy total, when that's the number one issue to Americans. So I think that that's a real concern. And again, I come back to the defining of Kamala Harris. Jack mentioned that New York Times Siena poll. Well, 28% of voters said they want to know more about Kamala Harris, more about her policies. She didn't answer who she was last night. She didn't answer what her vision is for the country. That is a problem for her, because Donald Trump will fill that vacuum, not only on interviews that he does far more than she does, but he'll do it on the airwaves when he's paying, for ads.
I'm going to stay with you for a second, Tricia, because you are a communications expert. But if you have Kamala Harris, isn't that exactly what you wanted to do last night? Stay emotional, talk about things like civil rights,
Absolutely.
Say a bunch of quick quips that at least people have heard, that they don't sit around and go, there weren't people with tiki torches in Charlottesville. I mean, you know what I mean? And just, if you're on her side and you're her communications director, didn't she do exactly what you wanted her to do, especially knowing you had kind of a friendly moderator situation?
Well, sure, she had the night she wanted. The question remains, is that enough? Because you're just speaking to the same audience you always were. You're not increasing your base. You're not turning any undecided voter over to you saying, I'm going to improve your lives if I'm in office. The problem is that people have heard these attacks against Donald Trump over and over again, really for the last 10 years. So to just take the time to relitigate it, sure, you filibustered, you got your attacks in. She even, she baited him. And honestly, it was a bait, hook, and switch, because especially in the rally sizes, that turned out to be a problem for him. So
don't do that. Don't talk about that to him. Yeah.
She also used his own language. I don't know if you guys noticed that. She said, they called you a disgrace. That was totally mind game. And I mean, she that's a prosecutor mind. She did it well.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Jack, as you watched it and you were hemorrhaging and losing your mind and texting rapidly, like a girl who just had,
guilty.
Yeah, like a young high school girl that just lost her prom date. At the end of the day, your readers and people you communicate with, how do you think they're going to see this thing? And did they watch it?
Yeah.
Yes, they did. I think many of our readers and listeners did watch. I think they're the folks that are, again, though, many of them are undecided, many of them are decided. Not many of them are undecided. But here, this showed up today, and I'm not going to read all of it, but this is how many of them feel, I believe, or think. Because I hate to project onto a large group of people, just one emotion or one way of thinking. But this person said the Harris strategy was well played. She lied, doubled down on it, weaved and answered nothing. However, she went after Trump's ego and let him do the rest. And particularly when it got tough in times, whether it was immigration or whatever else, if she can then pivot to talking about crowd size, and then that gets him, flustered a little bit. She did that brilliantly. But I think people who are fair-minded might look at that and go, "But what did you really say?" And this is what I think folks who are really discerning will also pick up on, and what I think Donald Trump will hammer. I don't know if you caught this. You probably did. She said, "My values have not changed." So she supports abolishing ICE, defunding police, implementing Soviet-style price controls, which, by the way, when you read her economic issue page, it does essentially say that, eliminating the filibuster in the U.S. Senate, stacking the Supreme Court, being left of Bernie Sanders, a declared socialist in how she votes. So does anyone want to ask her those questions? As a moderator, I would have gone, "Hey, okay, I hear you. Nothing has changed. Your values haven't changed. You said that you value these things. Axios just published an article that showed 9 things that you changed your position on. So why?" The question that needed to be asked was, why did you change your position on these things? And so I think that's where Donald Trump can make hay over the next 50 plus days is using her words against her and saying, "Well, she told you that she hasn't changed. And if she hasn't changed, here's what's in store for you." And what that means to you is higher prices, bread lines, shortages, right? World War III, whatever the case is, he's got to be very clear about painting that picture and telling Americans how he and JD Vance are going to do it differently.
Tricia, I get a sense that Donald Trump almost represents more of a movement than he does himself. But it feels like he's a populist movement for people who are angry and just feel like America's dealt them. I mean, it almost feels like a class thing right now.
Yeah.
That if you're doing well and you're tradition, and you live in a affluent neighborhood, you're going to stick to the "she makes me feel better." If you're at all struggling at all, or even if you're not struggling and you have a job where you're not putting away as much, I mean, it seems like there's 2 different Americas, and he speaks to one, and the one he speaks to, sometimes he can't get out of his own way. Donald Trump sometimes feels like he's his own worst enemy when it comes, because you pulled out the exact situation. You talk about his gate and the number of people there, that seemed to piss him off more than her lying. Am I misreading that?
No, you're completely right. I think last night was the perfect example that this is the people versus the machine, and that machine was the media and the Democratic Party cabal in one, versus Donald Trump, who I think represents the people. His weakness is often his ego, that the image that he wants to project. Who really cares if people are leaving your rallies earlier? It doesn't make one iota of a difference to the American people who are struggling to pay for gas and groceries. That's what they want to hear about. They want to hear what people are going to do about the 10 to 15 million people who illegally entered this country and currently reside here illegally. That's what people want to do. So I think I was a little bit disappointed. I wanted to see Donald Trump really prosecute the case better. I think in terms, honestly, that Jack just did, as far as why did you say XYZ about fracking? Why did you vote for the Green New Deal? Why did you say you would defund ICE? Why did you say you would give free healthcare to illegal immigrants? Why did you say you would pay for gender mutilation surgery for illegal immigrants? People want to know the answers to those questions, but we know the moderators aren't going to ask that. The media is not going to ask that. That leaves Donald Trump to ask that. And I think we could have seen a little bit more last night.
She's playing the abortion card, isn't she, though? I mean,
Yep.
wow. Jack, I mean, are you worried? I mean, boy.
Yeah, at the beginning of the election cycle, Joe, I said they have 2 things: orange man bad and abortion. And they're going to use abortion to get people out to vote. Now, in Ohio, that I don't think that plays as well or as much, because we dealt with issue 1 last year. There are 7 other states right now, though, that are considering potentially constitutional amendments, places like Florida, for example. But citizen-initiated legislation, I think, that's also on the ballot in other states with respect to abortion. But all of that to say, this goes back to, I think Trump kind of did it, and then he didn't get any help from the moderators. But abortion, the matter was already decided, and there is no abortion ban. Consistent with the 10th Amendment, the Supreme Court of the United States said this is a state issue. End of story. That's what I would have said last night. The Supreme Court decided this. It's a state issue. End of story. And if they said, well, are you going to create a federal ban? No, the Supreme Court said this is a state issue. I just answered that question. He was right when he said, well, Kamala Harris isn't going to do anything because she doesn't have the votes. But this again doesn't come down to having votes or doing it the right way or doing it the wrong way. It's that they're going to play that card as long as they can. And yeah, it does infuriate and frustrate me because abortion is now a matter that states get to decide. And when you think about that, that's how I would have pivoted if they wanted to continue down that road. This party talks about democracy. Well, democracy is making decisions at a state and local level, and the Supreme Court has allowed people to do that. You have the right in your state to put this on the ballot. You have a right to have your lawmakers pass a bill. Whatever that looks like, that is your right, and that's what this is about. But again, they're going to continue to position this as Donald. Oh, and by the way, I've got to get this in. Sorry, now I'm ranting. And bumbling and stumbling here. But I was furious last night on the abortion issue, and I just went blank on why. I was up late. The moderators talking about abortion and not really. Gosh darn it, Joe! I'm forgetting my.
She said Trump would sign a ban the day one.
Yeah, they said he would sign a ban, but there was another issue with abortion that I thought was, and you'll have to let me think on that for a minute.
Okay. They fact-checked him. So, Jack, what really ticked me off was David Muir, or it was Lindsay. I don't remember, Lindsay Davis. I don't remember which one. But they fact-checked Donald Trump saying no state allows no limits on abortion. Well, that's not true. There's 6 states and Washington, D.C. So was that your point? Or did I just overstep?
But that was
no. That is a hell of a point. It was the fact that they allowed her to do 2 things. Trump said, "I believe in exceptions for rape and incest and a threat to the mother's life," and then Kamala Harris ranted for 3 or 4 minutes, basically saying, "Well, if you have been raped or you're a victim of incest or there's a threat to your life, this man wants to intervene in your pregnancy and tell you what to do." The moderators let that go on. He literally just said, "I believe that there should be exceptions for rape and incest. And oh, by the way, I believe in IVF." And then the other part that they totally missed on was he said the mindset of the left is that some people on that side of the aisle do believe that a decision could be made after the baby is born. And then they went after him and said, well, no. And she said, no, that's not what he said. He said the mindset is abortion up to birth or even after birth. And the moderators missed the opportunity there to correct Kamala Harris. But, the abortion issue is so emotional, though. I think everybody that talks about it, especially under the lights and TV cameras, I think it gets very hostile and very confusing very quickly.
So, Tricia, didn't they accomplish what they wanted? We're talking about everything but the economy and crime.
Oh, absolutely. This is going to drive out voters. This is obviously an area of vulnerability for Republicans across the board nationally. But I mean, Arizona has a constitutional amendment on the ballot in November. If we don't think that's going to turn out voters, then we're kidding ourselves. The moderators, of course, were just completely wrong. There are 6 states, as I said, in Washington, D.C., that allow for limitless abortion. Infanticide, really. So I think I would have loved to see Donald Trump more, though, really talk about what are we going to do for women and for families to make sure that they have the support they need so that they can keep these babies that they love. What does that support look like from the federal level or even from the state level? If he's going, make an executive order, if he's going to push some sort of legislation, that's what Americans need to hear.
So where does that leave us? And we'll wrap up here. But so I'll set this up by saying yesterday, Nate Silver gave Donald Trump a 60% chance of winning, Kamala Harris 39%. And then everybody attacked Nate Silver because they don't like how he does math. Nate Silver's a nerd. I mean, he's just a guy from East Lansing, Michigan who does math. So they liked him because when he came out with Obama, he was their hero because he predicted it, right? So Nate Silver I'll be curious to what that is. But if I'm sitting there going, did that debate change this thing 30, 40%? I'll go to you first, Trish. You sit here today, where are we at? I look at it, it just feels like it was a dysfunctional evening on different reasons, just because it felt like it felt like reality TV in some ways, and then Trump didn't look very presidential, and it was like, what am I watching here? So as we move on, address the Nate Silver thing. Does it move that much? And where does everybody go from here? Start with you, Trish.
Maybe for the short term, not for the long term. I think she might get that kind of tiny convention bump that she thought she would get post DNC and never came to fruition. But long term, I still believe Americans are asking the question, what are you going to do to make my life better? How are you going to improve the economy? How are you going to fix this immigration crisis? We're still facing multiple wars globally. How are you going to return America to strength and prosperity? Kamala Harris did not answer that question last night. I don't think she'll answer that question coming up to November. And I think that Donald Trump still has the upper hand in this.
Jack?
So I think the race is tied. I think it has been tied for a while, and I think it will be tied going into November 5th. And I think it's going to come down to turnout, particularly in those battleground states. And I would say this, I don't think that Kamala Harris does well with Midwestern men, which is why she picked Tim Walz to be her running mate. And last night when she talked about the opportunity economy, and last night when she said in a roundabout way, just with different words, what she has said for years, looking toward the future, unburdened by what has been. I mean, that's really what she has. And I don't think that she moved a lot of people that need to be moved for her to get a massive bump from this. I think we will see some enthusiasm and a bump, but I still think that there are some things that are going to come down the pike that might ultimately decide this election.
You guys make great points. I'll just share with you the two things that I reacted to was when she goes, I'm not Joe Biden, I'm not Donald Trump. And then I kept going, well, then who the hell are you? Because I didn't feel like I knew that. The other part was when she said, I'm a gun owner, I kept going, what kind of gun do you own? And I couldn't believe the moderator didn't ask, like, what kind do you have? Shotgun, handgun, Glock, AK-47, tank? And she didn't answer. I thought that, do you think she really owns a gun? Anybody? Do you, Trish?
I can't picture Doug with a gun or her with a gun.
Squirt gun? I don't know. Maybe her definition of gun. Anyhow, Tricia McLaughlin, thanks for joining. I hope you'll come back sometime because, this is kind of a fun place to go.
Oh, definitely.
You've been great, and we always have turtles here from Maryland. Thank you for joining. Jack, always good to have you here. Hey, this is Grab Your Gear. We appreciate it. We'll see what happens. We'll talk about this again, and maybe Trish will come back before the election, and we'll talk about that. Jack Windsor, thanks again, Ohio Press Network. We appreciate it. We appreciate you. Send us your comments. Send us your questions. If we can find out any information you want to know, if you have your opinions and things like that on the debate or anything else, just go ahead, send it to Dick at grabyourgear.net. Dick coordinates everything, and Dick will find the answer to all your questions. In the meantime, for Apprentice Isabella, I am Joe. Have a great day, everybody. We'll talk to you next week back here on Grab Your Gear.